Follow the money on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
First Bet wants you to get in all the horse racing action. Sign up today with promo code Vegas1000. Receive $10 instantly and up to $1,000 bonus. VSiN.com/horses for details. Bonus code Vegas1000.
All right. Adam Chernoff joins the program now. If you're familiar with this show, Adam is spectacular on the NFL, and he joins us every single week during the football season. He also works for Covers.com, senior strategist. But I think he said during the break, first ever appearance in June, so we definitely appreciate it. Adam, thank you for coming on. I'll start with this. You teased everybody, great tease on Twitter earlier in the week, said, I'm going to write a scathing article. And you did, and it was a great job. The headline of the story that you wrote at Covers.com, where is the line? Sports betting regulators need to act now to protect the player. And you brought up a bunch of examples that's been going on where you live in Canada. So the floor is yours. Go ahead and explain the reasoning behind you going and putting this down, and writing this awesome article.
I think the biggest reason really was because this keeps happening everywhere, and it's happening to so many bettors. This is not a Canada and Ontario specific thing. No. This is happening in every state as well. And as this continues to become more and more frequent, not just to sharps or professionals, I mean, this is happening to everyday players at a pretty alarming scale. And as it continues to happen more and more frequently, I think we need to start talking about it, because really there's very little power that the player has, and everything is really skewed towards many of these operators. And it, quite frankly, just isn't fair for a lot of players in the industry.
Yeah. And as you wrote too, it is unfair where I am giving you information as a bettor, and the sportsbook is then taking that information and using it against me, and then moving the line or the number without taking a bet.
That's the biggest one, and probably the most common that people watching this segment or listening have experienced. And I refer to it as spooling. Okay. And that is when you tap submit bet and you are met with the circle that spins around in circles and goes and goes and goes. And then your bet is ultimately rejected, and you get offered back. How nice the sportsbooks to offer you back a portion of the bet you requested at worse odds after they've moved it. And you mentioned it perfectly, Pauly, where when bettors are wagering, they're giving information to a sportsbook by telling them how much they want to bet at certain odds. And if we get to a situation like we are now, where so many of these operators are taking that bet, not honoring it, and then offering you back a portion of it after moving the odds, they're taking that information that's being expressed by the bet that the player is giving them without any risk. And so they're getting all the information for free. They're turning it around on the player and saying, here's what we'll offer you now that we've used your information to shape a lot of these prices. And unfortunately, this is something that just happens far too often. And almost every operator at this point is really guilty of it in some way or another.
Well, I mean, Mike Palm from Circus Sports and VSiN, he came on the air, what was it, last week, Paul? Yes. And he told the story. He tried to make a $400 bet on a Cy Young future at 70-1, and this was at the counter, and they said, well, we'll give you $100 at those odds, and then we move the odds, and if you want more, we'll give it to you. And he's like, what?
The 25-1.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah, so it happens,
Absolutely
to
terrible.
Your point, it happens in Canada, it happens outside of Las Vegas, and it happens right here in the city as well.
Yep, it's all over. And I mean, people are going to listen to this, and I'm sure they're going to send direct messages where it's endless. People are trying to bet, and it's not significant amounts of money. $400, a lot of money to some, I understand it, but we're seeing this with as low as $25 bets, $50 bets. It's just now become not exclusive to professionals that are getting this treatment. It's happening to everyday bettors, and it's happening at many, many operators.
Okay, right. Now, you go read the article again, covers.com, or follow him on Twitter as well. He tweeted out the link. We just retweeted as well. But how does it stop now? I mean, number one, how's it allowed? I mean, I don't think you can't be able to move a line without taking a bet. The other thing is it on the regulators now? Does this come in as it repeatedly happens over and over and over again? And you mentioned the James Salinas thing, too, with the Thibodeau on the draft. I mean, is it on the regulators to say, that might be the most egregious? You actually took the bet.
Yep.
and then found out, oh, wait a minute, you're James Salinas, you can't do this. But what do you think can be done here to stop this?
It has to be on the regulators at this point. And I think the biggest issue right now is that a lot of the power from the regulators, with the ambiguity around how they write specific regulations, they give the onus back to the operator to decide how to do it within their house rules. And I understand that sports books need to have house rules, but we need to get to a spot where the rules are fair for the book as well as the player. Right now, it's 100% operator, 0% player. We can't get to the point where there's no limits and players can bet whatever they want. That's not fair for operators either. We need to find a spot where if a bet is being offered by a sports book, there needs to be clear acceptance rules about what they're willing to take on that bet. And if it's available for betting, they need to honor a bet that is made. And it's really pretty simple that if you're a sports book, you're posting a number, say what you're going to take. And if you take a bet, take the bet on it. That's really what we have to get to. But in terms of how a lot of the regulations are written in a lot of different states, how they're written here in Canada, it just defers back to house rules. And in so many cases, like I've shown in the article, a lot of these house rules just put 100% power within the house to do essentially whatever they want. And that's why we're seeing a lot of these issues occur. It's pretty unfair at the moment.
I don't know which example you brought up in the article is better, but for those listening who have not read the article yet, if you want to share the one maybe about the was it the CFL game or the bettor who deposited $500, tried to make a bet, and then they limited his bets to $1.34, but then they wouldn't let him take his money out. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, that's as bad as it gets. So not afraid to say BWin on that one was the book of choice. It's a regulated bookmaker. They took a $500 deposit from a player. After the deposit cleared and the money was out of his account and into the BWin account, he got limited to $1.34 per wager. And they required him to roll over the $500 once before withdrawing, which would have meant he needed to place 373 bets at $1.34 each in order just to get his money back. So essentially holding his deposit in spite of what he may have done betting-wise before that and forcing him to a pretty unrealistic rollover. Again, it sounds like people are going to listen and say, well, that's a one-off. That's never going to happen. This is happening all the time, and it's really, really unfortunate. The Bet Regal example, a little bit more extreme, not yet regulated. They've applied. They've yet to be approved, but they are the official sportsbook of the Canadian Football League. In Canada, we see their commercials every few minutes during a TSN broadcast of a CFL game. There's Hall of Fame players that they have as brand ambassadors. This is a very well-known, well-advertised sportsbook in Canada. They opened Ottawa last Friday as a 14.5-point underdog against Toronto. A number of people that I'm very close to wagered on Ottawa plus 14.5. One player in particular was able to get the spread as well as the money line. So these are full game markets. These aren't obscure prop markets like we usually hear in the stories, but full game sides and money lines. They made the bets. Bet Regal then moved the odds. So they acknowledged that the bets were made. They dropped Ottawa from 14.5 to 11.5. And they took bets on the game for the next 8.5 hours. The game plays out. Ottawa wins. So the point spreads win. The money line cashes. And an hour and a half after the game concludes, Bet Regal comes out and says, actually, this was a mistake on our part. We're going to void all the bets, and we're taking all the money back from everyone that won. So anyone that won the bet had the money put into their account. The result was settled. The game was paid out. And then an hour and a half after the fact, they come back and say, actually, this was a mistake on our part. The line was bad. We're taking the money back. So we see a situation where everyone that won had the money taken out. What was interesting about this story in particular, a lot of people that were betting on it carried a lot of influence within the media. There was a pretty big outcry in terms of messaging support. Took a day. Bet Regal ultimately made the right decision, paid the people back who they voided, and sort of free-rolled for the entire game. But you wonder what happened to the other side of the bets. You also wonder what happens to the people betting every day who don't have as big of a voice as the people who were betting on this game. How are they treated? And I can say from DMs and emails that I get constantly, they're treated much, much worse than the fate of the people who are ultimately paid out, not just by BetRegal, but by operators everywhere, because there are no void rules for a lot of these jurisdictions. The void opportunities is placed back on the sports book, and the players just have no power. And regulators are letting that slide, and it's an unfortunate situation to be in where it's just a lot of these operators treating bettors very, very unfairly.
Yeah, great analysis, great article. Again, you can follow him on Twitter. He sent it out there at Adam Chernoff. It's at covers.com. And we're up against it now. But that was an excellent breakdown. Thanks for the examples as well. And you're spot on. The regulators have to step in and do something eventually here. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Who comes up with that idea? $500 deposit. We're going to limit them to $1.34, but you got to play 373 bets to get it before you get it back.
Doesn't have to be this way.
How is that a thing?